Well, welcome. I want to thank everybody for attending. Supervisor Lou Calcano, thank you for being here. It's April 15th, and I'm smiling. That usually doesn't happen. I'm a reformed accountant. All the real accountants are actually out there filing extensions for their clients. One of the reasons I'm smiling is our governor's here once again in Monterey County. The governor's no stranger to our county. He's here often, actually, and he understands our issues. He understands ag. He understands tourism. He understands education. He's done a lot of great things. He's appointed quality judges to our benches. He's appointed Supervisor Isla Matima Cutchin to ensure that the 4th District had a voice. About 2.5 years ago, I introduced you at a town hall meeting, and then we talked about workers' comp and how important that was. But today we're here to talk about taxes. Nobody usually likes to talk about taxes, but it's important. We have representatives from the Monterey Peninsula Taxpayers Association, including Rick Hoyer, one of our board members. We have Andrea Borchard from the California Republican Taxpayers Association. We have some business owners. We have Jeanne Byrne, who has a former mayor of Pacific Grove who runs a 3-person architectural firm. And we have ag leader John D'Arrigo, who owns D'Arrigo Brothers, employs over 2,000 people in 2 states. So I'm sure everybody doesn't want to hear from me. They want to hear from you. So welcome, Governor.
I know very much. Thank you very much, Paul, for the nice introduction, and I want to thank you also for, helping us organize this event here, and I want to thank also Mayor Dennis Donahue for being here today and for hosting this event also, and Supervisor Lou Calcagno. I want to thank you also for being here today and helping us, and Tom Shee. Where's Tom? Right over here, who is with our Department of Finance. And anything about our budget you don't like, it's his fault. And anything that's good is me. So, but anyway, he's here with us to just, in case there's any technical questions that I may not be able to answer, he's here and he's going to jump up into action. Even though he has a broken leg and he's running around with a cast, but he's going to jump up. But anyway, it's great to be here today. And I'm basically going up and down the state, have been doing this since we announced our budget on January 10th, to talk to the people and to have town hall meetings like this and to meet with business leaders and with ordinary citizens and with elected officials like we have here, police chiefs, sheriffs, law enforcement, all kinds of people, so they understand what the problem is with our budget and how we can solve it, what our idea is and how to solve it, what other recommendations that were made to solve the problem. And I'm always a big believer that I should only spend so much time in Sacramento, but the rest of the time I should spend all over the state of California, because California is not Sacramento, even though the politicians in Sacramento think that's California. But on a map, when you look at it, it's only this little dot, and there's the rest of all the 58 counties and the over 400 cities and so on. That's where really the action is, and this is why I feel always very strong to go out and to talk to the people. And I'm a people's person anyway. I always have been in bodybuilding, or during my show business years, I've been always, connected with the people, and same is in politics, because it's the people that really put me to Sacramento. So I always like to go back to the people and talk to them about it. But this thing that we're talking about here is the budget crisis. And this is, I think, a big, big problem that we have this year. Now, there are some people that say that we got into this problem because of the economy slowing down. Well, it's true, the economy has slowed down, and we have the subprime mortgage crisis, and we have the housing market that has gone down, and it has had a spillover effect on the economy. There's no two ways about that. But that's not really why we have this budget problem. Because we always know, when you look back at the history, that we have up and downturns with the economy and with revenues. So there's nothing new. I mean, since the 40 years I've been here in this country, we've had 6 or 7 of those downturns economically. The thing is really, what do we do about it? How do we protect ourselves? It's like when you have an intersection and you see people crashing into each other, eventually you say, well, let's put a traffic light up there, or let's put a stop sign there, or let's do something to stop that from happening. Well, the state of California has never really done anything about that problem. They've run into it over and over, where governors have to increase taxes or have to make severe cuts or, steal money from everywhere, like in 2003 when we had this disastrous situation They just grabbed money from the pensions, they grabbed money from transportation, they grabbed money from local government. That's why we passed Proposition 1A, so they can't steal any more money from local government. That's why we passed Proposition 42, so they can't steal any more money from transportation. That's why we passed Proposition 58, so they can't go and borrow money for ongoing programs anymore. So we've tightened the noose since I've come into office. But the problem is still existing because they still have not been willing to go and solve the problem, which is that when we have an increase in revenues, a spike in revenues, like they had in 1999, they had a spike in revenues of 23%, and they spend it all. Not one penny was put aside into a rainy day fund, knowing that the economy eventually will come down, which they did, of course, a few years later. And then we had the big crash in 2003, where we didn't have enough money to pay our bills, and we almost went bankruptcy. And so in 2005, we had the same thing again. We had a surge in revenues of 13%. And again, most of that money was spent. We, the administration, was trying to take some of that money and put it into one-time spending, put it, to pay back transportation, and to pay back local government, and to pay this back and that, and to pay off all of the various different things. But the rest of it was still grabbed, and it was all spent. And so this now, we have a downturn in the economy. Doesn't mean that our revenues are less than last year's revenues. No, they're still up 1%. But our spending formulas require us to spend 10% more. So of course we can't do that. We can't spend money we don't have. And so this is why we are really trying to make this the year of reforming the budget system itself. So I challenged the legislators at the beginning of the year, and they said, let's do three things this year. Let's first of all have the mid-year cuts. Because we know since last August that we've been spending hundreds of millions of dollars every month more than we are taking in. It started in last August. $200 million we were spending more than we were taking in. Then by September it got to $300 million. Then in November it was $400 million. In December it was $600 million. And then finally in January I declared a fiscal emergency. Now what does that mean? That means that on the Proposition 58, we can go now and say to the legislators, okay, you have 45 days to make the mid-year cuts that we suggested. Legislators did a good job. They came in 1 week early. They made the mid-year cuts, which was around $1.2 billion. And now that was solved, the problem. Now, step number 2 is to go and solve the budget for this coming fiscal year. And step number 3 then is to go and create a budget reform, a system where we put a rainy day fund aside from now on. That if we have again a spike in revenues, that we put this money aside. That we say, okay, the average in the last 10 years, we saw an increase in revenues annually of 5.4%. So let's take that, because that's what will happen in the future. We should not spend more than 5.4% every year. That should be the increase, no more than that. And if you have a spike in revenues of 10% or 12%, the extra money goes into a rainy day fund. Then when we have a downturn economically, now we have money to supplement the shortfall of revenues. This way we don't have to increase taxes. This way we don't have to go and make severe cuts or anything, because we smoothen out the two lines. I have here the charts. As you can see here, the green line represents the revenues and the yellow line represents the spending. Those two lines are totally unrelated. Totally unrelated. Well, how do we do that? This means all debt here, deficit, 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 all these years here. Then we came into office here, we brought the two lines together because there was economic recovery. And now look at the spending line goes off and the revenues are flattening out. This represents, the difference here represents $10 billion. Now, if we would have had 10 years ago already the budget reform that I'm talking about, the two lines would be coming together here, not perfectly together, but much closer together. So that when you have it out of whack here, it's maybe $2 billion, but not $10 billion. Now, if we don't reform, this is what happens if we don't reform our budget. The lines will separate more and more, and every year this represents a difference of around $10 billion. So it's irresponsible. You cannot tax your way out of this situation, may I remind you. Now, if we have the reform this year in place, you can see the two lines coming together. So this is a very simple thing to do, but it is very hard for Sacramento because politicians just traditionally love to promise people things that they can't keep. And then they go and they get frantic. How do we go now and keep our promises? And that's why they keep spending, and they keep spending, and they keep spending money they don't have. They love to go and spend money in Sacramento. They love to sign that check, but on the back. They never have signed a check in the front. See, that's the thing. They always spend someone else's money, so it's easy to go and make those decisions and just spend, spend, and spend. And that's what gets us into trouble all the time. And then they always have, as soon as they run out of money, or when we have a shortfall in revenues, the first thing they say is, let's go and increase taxes. But as I said, you can't tax your way out of this problem. This is a problem. It's a structural problem. People come to me and they say, some people, may I remind you in Sacramento, some people say, you see, you should have never gotten rid of that vehicle license fee tax. Well, I felt when I came into office, and I promised this to the voters, that they just increased your taxes, your vehicle license fee, $4 billion. In the meantime, you, the people, didn't do anything wrong. It was the politicians that made the mistake in Sacramento. That's why we got into trouble in 2003. It wasn't you. It wasn't the people out there. It wasn't the people that were buying cars. Not at all. It was the politicians. So they should get us out of trouble. So I said we get rid of that increase in vehicle license fee, and we gave it back to the people. It was then $4 billion. Now it's $6 billion to go back to the people. So altogether, the people of California, the taxpayers, have saved $20 billion because we gotten rid of that increase in the vehicle license fee. But you know something? If we would have kept it, all of that money would have been spent too. And we would be in the same mess. Because no matter how much money you give Sacramento, no matter how much money you give them, they will always spend it. Because they cannot live within their means. So this is why I don't believe in increasing taxes. This is why I say we should not go there. This is, of course, the first answer. Now, of course, I made a recommendation. I say anything is on the table. Bring me all your ideas. If you talk about closing tax loopholes, show me the tax loopholes that don't make any more sense. Show it to me. I want to see it. If something doesn't make any sense, of course we should get rid of it. But if it does produce jobs and revenues for the state, then why would we get rid of it? It's a tax incentive, not a loophole. It's a tax incentive, really. So this is why we have to. But I am open-minded. I say, put everything on the table. All your ideas, I want you to get creative. Put it on the table and we go and look at it. And we will negotiate. Of course, it's not always my way, because I'm not the only one that is running the state. There is 120 legislators. I respect their opinion. Let's all sit down and talk about that. That's how we can solve the problem. But one thing I can tell you, that I've tried now twice before to create that budget reform. When I first came into office, literally 3 weeks after I was in office, I asked the legislators to vote on a budget reform, to put a rainy day fund aside and to have a cap on an increase in spending. It was voted down. Bang, gone. They had no interest to live within their means. So then I said, okay, it's actually the people that have sent me to Sacramento, not the legislators, so I'm going to go to the people directly. And we called a special election. And we asked the people, well, the other side has spent $150 million against us and took us out. And they made the people believe that this was the worst idea to have budget reform, that this will kill education and will kill everything. The fact of the matter is, our budget proposal, our reform will protect education. Because what is happening right now to education is irresponsible. That we are taking our education system and our schools, our teachers and our children, our families on that roller coaster ride, where everyone has to hold on for dear life. 1 year we overfund education, the next year we take the money away because we don't have enough money. That's what's going on right now. Right now, education is being overfunded, overappropriated by $1 billion plus right now. And next year, this next fiscal year, we have to take $4 billion away. because we don't have it. It is irresponsible. This is not a budget system. As a matter of fact, Proposition 98 was voted by the people to protect education. There is no protection there. When we don't have the money, we cannot pay for education. So this is the big problem. And so there's vulnerable citizens out there that get a punishment because of that, because we don't have a coherent system. Law enforcement gets a shortage of revenues. The prisons, we don't have enough money for the prisons. So there's all these problems that are rising because we have a budget system that doesn't work. And so this is why I'm going up and down on a crusade to let people know to fight for budget reform. The other side tries to go and divert the attention to the schools. Look how terrible that governor is. He's taking money away from education. They're trying to put the attention on this. But the fact of the matter is, it's the budget system that doesn't allow us to have enough money for education. That's why we have to fix the system. So now I want to just open it up to a question and answer. I'm sure that you have interesting questions, and I'm more than happy to answer some of them. Yes, please.
Governor, my name is Tom Carvey. I'm a former elementary school principal, and one of the things that was very frustrating to me was the budget was never predictable for our schools. So oftentimes we wouldn't know how much money we had even until November after the school year had already started. I think there's a vast need for educational reform, not just throwing money at a problem, but would your plan and what you propose, would it help to ensure that the budgets for schools would be predictable so that school principals and others that are involved would be able to know how much money they had at the beginning of the school year?
Well, I tell you that if it is up to me, I would never allow Proposition 98 to be suspended in the first place. Because there's no reason to suspend education or to suspend anything or to give less money when you can see our revenues are always keep going up. Why is there a reason to suspend anything? It's only because one year we are spending more than we should and the next year we don't have enough money. It's irresponsible budgeting. That's why I say that if we say, let's increase and put a cap on and have an increase in spending of 5.4%, which this is the average here, is 5.4%, then we can put education 5.4% every year more and more and more, and you know exactly what teachers you can hire, you know exactly what your expenses are, you know exactly the amount of money that is coming in. That is the fair way to go. I love education. I feel right now that education needs reform, more accountability, but also even more revenues. And I would fight for that. But we got to go and reform the budget system so there is consistency there and so there's reliability, because it is frustrating for someone like you as a school principal. You already have your hands full with, managing this whole thing, which is a huge responsibility of being a leader of a school. Because you're really in charge of everything, to get the grades up and to communicate with the parents and the teachers and to create this partnership between the children and the teachers and the principals and all of those kind of things. Now on top of it, you don't know if you should hire teachers or if you should fire teachers, if you should send them pink slips and all this stuff. By March 15th, they had to go and send out the pink slips. They still don't know yet what their budget is going to look like. That's why I urge the legislators, come to my office before March 15th. Let's at least solve that problem about education. No one showed up, even though my office is open. Because they're more interested in a kabuki, to go out and to do the protests and to do all of those kind of things, what they call to soften the meat of the Republicans and all this. That's the kind of kabuki and the song and dance and the show business that's going on and has been for decades. That's just the way it is. I try to bring them in and say, let's forget about all this. Let's solve problems. That's our job. We have been sent to Sacramento to solve those problems. Okay? Yes, please.
Governor Rick Hoyer with the Monterey Peninsula Taxpayers Association. It seems that local taxpayers are more and more under siege as local governments go to them for tax increases to fund budget issues that are brought about in large part by an out-of-control pension and benefit plan and benefit system. We go to the local jurisdiction and ask them to start trying to address it. Their standard answer is, we can't do anything, Sacramento has to fix it. Our contention is actually both need to fix it, But thus far, more and more local jurisdictions are getting in trouble. Vallejo is borderline bankruptcy. We have Pacific Grove that's going to the second time now for taxes. 3 different local jurisdictions are. In large part, it's this issue. But yet, we need some leadership in Sacramento to help try to address it.
Well, as you know, that we put a commission together to study for the first time what is really our obligation there. And the answer that came back was somewhere around $70 billion. As a matter of fact, if you take the counties and everything, the whole state, it could be more than $100 billion. So this is huge. So it is a combination of state and local government. And the problem is that deals are being made all the time as if there is endless amount of money available, but it is not. And now we have the obligation that we have to pay for that because those deals were made. That is the sad story. So this is why it's a wake-up call for everyone to go and when you start making future deals, to take that under consideration. But we have to start paying in now every year in order to start really funding those, obligations. These are unfunded obligations, and I think we have to also put it in our financial statement and our books. And so it's really a sad story, and it is something that goes back decades, those deals that were made, as you know. And now I think it is good that we have to put it on the books so people can see it all the time and see that we have obligated ourselves for too much, that we've made deals that we can really in the end not pay for. Okay? Anything? Yes, please. Want to use this?
Thank you, Governor. Butch Lindsay, former Monterey County Supervisor. If we listen to the media or all the noise that I learned a new word, kabuki, that's out there, it seems that education is the only part of the budget that quote, you and your staff have said that's the only place we're going to take money from this budget. Could you explain real briefly what other areas, or I'm sure there's some across-the-board things, but just briefly for me. Everyone else may know.
Thank you for asking that. Yes, we have decided in our January 10th budget to cut 10% across the board because we were short, like I said, the 10% spending increase, but we don't have that money. We only have a 1% increase in revenues. So we said, let's make a 10% cut across the board. And when we talk about a cut, it is important for you to know, and probably most of you know it anyway, that we are not talking about the 10% cut from where we were with our spending, but it is a 10% cut from what is the proposed spending. So basically, we are spending the same amount of money as we do this year, next year, but not more, because we don't have more money. So this is really what it is. But it's 10% across the board. And there's some people that have criticized me for the 10% cut across the board, and they said, why haven't you shown that what your preferences are? There must be something that is more important to you than something else. And yes, there is. But the fact is that when you start doing that, then people immediately start complaining and saying, oh, you see, he's touching the Democratic programs, but not his Republican programs. He saved law enforcement, but he wanted to go after the social programs. So what I did was, in order for them not to be able to do that, I said, let's do it 10% across the board. If there's Republican programs or Democratic programs, I don't care what it is, it's 10% across the board. And then let the legislators, Democrats and Republicans, get together and work it out of what their preference really is and how they want to solve this problem. Because like I always said, the legislators on the end are my partners. And so they should be working together and work this out. Any other question? Yes, please.
Governor Matt Gourley, Council Member, City of Gonzales. Thank you for showing up. And I'd really like to praise the efforts with the infrastructure bond. We just were received, as the City of Gonzales, $400,000 in infrastructure money, and I really appreciate that. I have 3 kids in elementary school. 4 years ago, during the budget cuts, my third grader didn't have a math book. And today, with your leadership, our kids are, education being well funded, it's helping us. I think I just have to err on the side of caution. 4 years ago, Supervisor Calcagno heard from the cities and counties were at each other's throat with those budget cuts. And from booking fees to the payments to County Com, our Prop 172 monies, that's very dear to the cities, and we need to keep those monies. So I don't know what we can do in this budget. I know it's 10% straight across the board. Our COPS money is going to be cut. Our COPS and schools grant. With the gang problems going on currently in the city of Salinas, we're only 15 miles away. We're a small town population of 8,500 kids, or 8,500 people, and we're really concerned about the influence that Salinas has on our little city. So we want we need the money for the proactive steps to keep the gangs from happening in our cities. So we need to be able to work with the county. We don't need to be adversary with the county. We need to keep the funds together, and those 172 monies are very important to us.
Well, thank you very much. And first of all, let me just say that I'm glad that you guys got the money for infrastructure, because as you all know, that for 4 decades, California didn't really build infrastructure. And it was really amazing when I came into office and I looked at that, of how far we have fallen behind with infrastructure. That's why I campaigned up and down the state to go and to create the infrastructure bonds. And both parties worked together really well. I was very proud of Democrats and Republicans coming together on that. And we all campaigned up and down the state together. And the people approved finally $42 billion of infrastructure bonds. And I think it's just the foot in the door, because California really needs, in the next 20 years, $500 billion of infrastructure in order to really bring our roads and our bridges and tunnels up to the level where they ought to be, expand our university system, fix all of our levees, build more schools, and all of those kind of things. But so this is really terrific. And one of the things that I want to mention is that we are so happy that we have these infrastructure bonds, because we have now still $29 billion left of that money that we now can push out faster in order to create jobs, because there is a tremendous amount of workers that are out of work because of the slowdown in the housing market, and there's less homes being built, and now we can push that money out and create more jobs. And that has been really, really a big asset for us, besides just building infrastructure, to also do job creation and all those kind of things. Second of all, as you know, like I said, with Proposition 1A, we protect now local government. So we wanted to make sure that they don't take these billions of dollars from local government every time there's a financial crisis. And now they won't do it, because they know they can only borrow from local government, but they have to pay it back within 3 years. So they can't do that, because, it doesn't look good the next 2 years. So there's no way to pay it back. So they're not going to go there either. So I think local government is protected, except, like you already mentioned, in education and in law enforcement. There will be less money spent. But again, remember, in the end, mine is only a budget proposal. No, it's not the budget. It's a proposal. And now Democrats and Republicans will work it out and will come up with a solution to all of this. Okay? Yes.
Are there any more questions for the governor?
Yes, please.
Jeanne Byrne, former mayor of Pacific Grove. I'd just like to follow up on Rick's comment about the retirement programs. I know that a number of employees in our city said they would gladly shift to another retirement program in order to keep their jobs. Is there a way to work with maybe the League of California Cities or somebody? I mean, this seems like it's so widespread in California that it would be really important to bring that back again.
Well, let me just say that our commission that we put together that studied this, and it was from Democrats and Republicans on that commission, they recommended strongly that we pay, instead paying into these retirement funds, and that we, fund those unfunded liabilities. So if anyone has any other ideas, I wish that you would communicate that to us here in Sacramento and to our office, so that we can work with you and look at your proposals. Because, like I said, we have an open door policy. We love to get input from locals, because we always feel that all great things come from the local level, not from Sacramento. So this is why your input will be very important. Okay, thank you.
Ready for some more questions, Governor?
Anytime, yes.
Okay, the governor still has time for some more questions.
Hi, Governor. Brandon from Senator Maldonado's office. I had a question on, actually a question, more of an idea, in terms of the Senator Maldonado proposed a bill in 2006 for the Office of the Independent Auditor to find the fraud, waste, and abuse in our government, and that bill was killed. And I think with the current crisis and situation we have now, maybe some folks in Sacramento might have a different viewpoint on that idea. And I was wondering if you you were looking into such a thing?
Well, first of all, let me just say that even though you don't hear it on a daily basis, but we have auditing going on and looking at the departments, each of the departments, if there's any waste, if there's any fraud, if there's any abuse or anything like this, all the time. Because when I came into office, it's one of the things that we have done right away in order to make it more streamlined. And we have saved a lot of money because of it. I mean, each department has saved money, so we're very proud of that progress that has been made in that area. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not maybe still something out there, but that question comes up more periodically when you have a budget crisis. But I can guarantee you, we're talking here about $17.5, $18 billion of deficit. So no matter how much you look with a magnifying glass, you will never find that money anywhere. The reality is there's only one solution, and that's to fix the budget system. That we don't spend those billions and billions and billions of dollars when we have a revenue spike. Just spend it and sit there and debate over how can we get rid of that money, how can we spend it, rather than putting it into a rainy day fund and do what businesses have to do and what families have to do. You've got to go and start projecting out in the future and say, this is how much money we have, and this is where there could be a downturn, this is how we should protect ourselves. That's what we need to do. Okay, so thank you very much. Okay, there's one more question right over here.
Governor, you mentioned the across-the-board tax, the tax or the budget changes we have to do are obviously is necessary. But part of the package that I'm seeing is a way to stimulate the economic growth, and we're being barraged with fuel expenses and everything else in business, and that's taken a toll to kind of get how do you stimulate the economy back? Because obviously this is showing a growth in the economics of California over the next 12 years or the next 6 years. It looks like. I can't see that far, but
that's right, 2012.
So what's your idea? Because I know you're very pro solar, green, turning California into kind of a green movement, something that's going to kind of charge the economics I see in California itself. It might just stimulate through the whole nation. Do you still see tax breaks coming from doing green building and green construction and solar energy? Is that something that's going to be re-looked at?
Well, first of all, your question is a good question. And let me tell you that what is important here is that I'm, as you know, a big believer in supporting business, because it's businesses that create the jobs, and it's businesses, when you create the jobs, that people pay taxes, and it brings the revenues to the state and all of those things. So this is where the action is. A lot of people in Sacramento don't recognize that. They always want to beat up on business. They always think that business, that they're greedy guys that want to just, make a lot of money and that's it. Let's beat up on them. Let's put the regulations on them. Let's put more taxes on them and so on. Well, when I first came into office, one of the things that I recognized was that workers' comp was the poison of our economy. That everywhere I went on my campaign trail in 2003, businesses left and right complained about workers' comp, how the costs are going up at double-digit numbers and so on. So I promised myself that in the first year we will reform workers' comp, and that I will go out and collect the signatures to put it on a ballot if I need to. And so we collected the signatures simultaneously while we were negotiating workers' comp. And when we then finally, when we got to the sticking point, we finally put the 1.2 million signatures on the table when we negotiated. And they saw those 1.2 million signatures, and they finally signed our reforms. And since then, 63% reductions in workers' comp costs. $24 billion altogether went back to businesses. So now add that, $20 billion just in a vehicle license fee that went back to the people, and $24 billion in workers' comp costs went back to businesses. That's what I'm about. I'm about giving money back to the people rather than taking money from the people. That's what you have to do. So, and then when it comes to green, clean technology, I always say it in the beginning, and I'm a strong believer now, and we see it firsthand, that green, clean technology in the end will create more jobs. It will stimulate the economy. It creates a whole new economy. This is, the environmental economy that we're seeing now exploding, because California is number one in that anyway. We have seen an increase in venture capital coming to California of 100% just this last year. So there's all kinds of great things. And there are, like, for instance, the Million Solar Roof Initiative, where people get money back for putting a solar on their roof and so on. So there will be tax incentives that will happen. There will be stimulation in the economy because of the creation of jobs and all kinds of opportunities because of the green, clean technology.
Okay, well, we thank you for being here today and taking time to express the budget with the community. We've got a lot of respect for you and all the great things you're doing. You're talking what we like to hear, and I'm sure everyone here from the business community and the community as a whole appreciates you stopping in Salinas and Monterey County to make this presentation to us. I personally thank you for the money you put into the road structure fund. And we're going to have the 101 safety improvements start construction here in about a year and a half, and we've got the Salinas Road that was ready to go, and with the money that we got in the last bonds through your support, we'll have construction on that project take place. So you're doing a lot of great things. We realize you've got a tough battle to fight, but you're not fighting it alone. We're out there to help you and support you in all your endeavors, and just keep up the good work and bring the message to the people. I think you got a lot of support out there. It's just a matter of getting everyone on board to understand that it's not a show and tell deal, and we're not against the schools, that we're really supporting schools, but in a long, financial, supportive manner. Again, thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you all very much. Thank you.